All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are jumping right into a historical mystery so absolutely massive, it's literally been debated for 6 millennia. We're going back 6,000 years to modern-day Iraq, where this highly advanced civilization just seemingly emerged out of nowhere. We're talking about a people who left behind accounts so detailed and, honestly, so perplexing that researchers, historians, and theorists are still fiercely debating their true meaning today.
So, how exactly did a complete civilization appear almost out of nowhere? Let's dive right into this impossible puzzle. By traditional historical standards, human progress is slow, really slow. But with the Sumerians, humanity rapidly acquired knowledge of complex mathematics, precise astronomy, and advanced agriculture virtually overnight. It's like someone just flipped a switch. But before we get into all the wild mythology and stories of sky visitors, we really need to lay down the hard physical evidence they left behind in the dirt. Section 1. The evidence. Just look at this unbelievably rapid progression. Around 4000 BCE, they emerge in Mesopotamia, that famous land between two rivers. Then, just 500 years later, around 3500 BCE, bam, they invent the wheel. And by 3200 BCE, we're already seeing the very first cuneiform writing. In the grand scheme of human history, a sudden leap in innovation like this is, well, it's nothing short of breathtaking. And we're not just talking about basic survival tools here either. They suddenly gave us the wheel, the very first legal codes to actually govern society, and an incredibly precise 12-month calendar. So yeah, you can literally thank the Sumerians for your monthly rent cycle. They also gave us cuneiform writing using these tiny wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay. And honestly, thank goodness they used clay, because it meant thousands of these tablets survived the millennia, leaving us with this incredible, tangible written record. Section 2. The narrative. Visitors from the sky. Because thousands of these clay tablets survived, we really don't have to guess what the Sumerians believed. We can just read it for ourselves. And the crucial focal point here is a very specific term found repeatedly in the texts, the Anunnaki. Roughly translated, this means those who came from heaven to earth. Now, what's so fascinating is that the Sumerians didn't write about them as, distant, invisible, abstract spirits. Not at all. They described beings who physically interacted with humans, walked right alongside them, built cities, gave laws, and even appointed kings directly. So, where exactly did they come from, and why were they even here? Well, according to the Enuma Elish, which is the Babylonian creation epic, and extensive translations by scholar Zecharia Sitchin, the Anunnaki arrived from a planet called Nibiru. And their mission? It was surprisingly industrial. The texts claim they came to Earth to mine our gold, supposedly to take it back and repair their own planet's failing atmosphere. But, as the story goes, mining is absolutely brutal work. Eventually, the Anunnaki workers did what literally any overworked employees would do. They staged a massive rebellion. To solve this ancient labor strike, the texts claim the Anunnaki leadership came up with a pretty radical solution. Actually, scratch that. Radical might be an understatement. They decided to just create a brand new worker class. They took their own DNA and mixed it with the DNA of early hominids that were already roaming the Earth. The result of that experiment? Homo sapiens. Us. The specific Sumerian word used in the text for this creation is Lulu, which literally translates to primitive worker. Section 3. The cast of characters. To really understand the depth of this story, we have to look at the divine hierarchy. It starts at the very top with Anu, the supreme king. Anu gave control of Earth to his 2 sons, who, frankly, could not have been more different from each other. On one side, you have Enlil, the commander of Earth operations. He was strict, incredibly powerful, and to put it mildly, not a fan of humanity. He mostly saw us as a loud, overpopulating nuisance. But on the other side is Enki, the brilliant scientist. Enki was the one who actually engineered humanity, and according to the texts, he had a deep sympathy and a real soft spot for his creations. As you can imagine, this sets up a massive, ancient conflict over our ultimate fate. And that sibling conflict culminates in a striking parallel that has fueled endless academic debate ever since it was discovered. Enlil, completely fed up with noisy humans, decides to just send a massive flood to wipe us out entirely. But Enki rebels against his strict brother. He secretly warns one human, a man named Utnapishtim, telling him to build a boat and save the animals. I mean, the parallels to the Genesis myth of Noah are absolutely undeniable. Except there's a huge catch here. The Sumerian version predates the biblical tale by at least 1,000 years. Section 4. The verdict. The modern debate. So we've seen exactly what the ancient texts say. Now, we must impartially examine how modern thinkers, scientists, and historians actually interpret this 6,000-year-old narrative today. We basically have two distinct camps looking at the exact same evidence. On one hand, we have the ancient alien theorists who view these texts as literal, historical accounts of extraterrestrial visitation. On the other hand, we have mainstream historians and archaeologists who classify these stories as highly sophisticated, creative, mythological allegories. Let's break down the arguments for both sides. The ancient alien theorists point out that there is just way too much specific detail in these texts for them to be pure fiction. They highlight these undeniable cross-cultural similarities, like how Sumer, Egypt, and Mesoamerica all built pyramids and shared incredibly similar stories of sky gods despite being separated by vast oceans. Furthermore, they point to physical anomalies in the archaeological record. Out-of-place artifacts like the Baghdad Battery, the complex gears of the Antikythera mechanism, and the massive Nazca lines. For this camp, these things are solid proof of technology that was simply way too advanced for its era, which they argue completely corroborates the Anunnaki narrative. Conversely, the mainstream historical view offers a completely different lens, which is perfectly summarized by this thought. The Sumerians were incredibly advanced because human beings are incredibly creative. Mainstream historians argue that these are simply deeply meaningful myths, created by brilliant early humans who were just trying to make sense of their complex world. And as for those worldwide similarities and flood stories, well, historians point out that major catastrophic natural floods actually did happen in the ancient world that naturally led to shared traumatic human experiences across different regions, which eventually became mythologized over time. So, while the interpretation is fiercely debated, here is what we can all absolutely agree on. The texts are real. The Anunnaki are undeniably written in them. The Sumerian flood story definitively predates Genesis, and honestly, perhaps most exciting of all, there are literally thousands upon thousands of cuneiform tablets sitting in museum basements around the world right now, completely untranslated. A vast amount of this ancient mystery remains entirely locked away in clay. Who knows what secrets those untranslated tablets still hold? Whether the Anunnaki were powerful mythological allegories invented by a highly creative people or something much more literal, the fact remains the Sumerians left us an extraordinary 6,000-year-old record of human origins. They laid the very foundation for civilization as we know it, leaving us to endlessly ponder their brilliant, sudden rise. So after looking at all the evidence we've covered in this explainer, ancient gods or ancient aliens, what do you think? Let that question sit with you and keep exploring.